Welcome. A few technical difficulties, but that's
A
okay.
few?
Here's what I love. So, welcome to the Bunny Interviews. This is Dan Herrin.
Again.
Thankfully, he is a very dear friend of mine.
And we'll do
very
that.
forgiving.
Take two, right? Take two.
And
Take
very
two.
forgiving. And very forgiving. So,
Absolutely.
for those of you who didn't hear it the first time, I'm going to introduce you, and then we're going to jump into our fun-filled, sexy interview. So,
That's right.
for those of you who do not know who this wonderful man is, this is Dan Herrin. He is the founder of the Herrin Group, established in 1998, which sounds way longer ago than it should be.
Right. That's right.
Before that, you had a great career as a federal law enforcement agent. You were a college athlete, and you've just been a globetrotting badass all this time, racking up really cool stories through work and pleasure. Fort Worth and I met you on Twitter, of all places, which I think is remarkable how many people get together in friendships and even in love on something like Twitter. But since then, we've worked together. We've had great conversations. And this today is really just a continuation of all the great conversations that we've had over the years. So welcome and thank you so much for being the best sport ever. Welcome to the Bunny Interviews.
Well, you have to remember, I used to have a national podcast, and it was something all the time initially. I mean, and it just is. It's just the way it is. You know, so I roll with the punches. Not a big deal.
I love it.
But no, I think it was funny because it was just serendipity with you and Fort Worth Playboy, and I'm sure you've had the same experience with others where I think I got on in like 2000, maybe 13 or 14, but I was just like, I had like 100 followers, and I think I met you guys when we collectively might have had like 500 followers.
Maybe.
You know,
maybe.
Yeah. And we were just talking like we do now, you know?
Yeah, exactly. There's
Yeah,
something to be said for authenticity and just being able to be yourself and feeling like you have a platform where you can and you just are part of the conversation.
And I think there's something said for just sometimes there's this weird, I hate to get all metaphysical on you, this weird organic serendipitous force that brings like-minded people together. Somehow we found each other. I have no idea how that happened, but it happened.
We're all lucky. We're all lucky that it did.
Absolutely. It's been wonderful meeting you guys, and I'm so glad for your success. I mean, for both of you. And like I've told people before, like when I'm talking to, I got to be careful not to use y'all's real names. I feel like that would be like telling the world
all the time.
That would be like telling the world that like Batman is really Bruce Wayne, you know? So I know like the Coke formula, you know, I know the cork formula. I know the real names, but I'm going to do my best not to spill the beans. But meeting you guys, and this is the great thing about hopefully our audience will see. Like this is the way we talk on a normal basis. This is just us. I wouldn't even call it an interview. It's an eavesdropping.
That's a good point. It's really just eavesdropping and inviting other people to listen to our conversations that we have anyway.
Yeah, they're pretty ribald, so they're not for everybody. But you know, that's not our demographic anyway.
That's true.
We like the cutting edge, the rebels, the people who run with scissors naked in the house when nobody's looking.
That's our
people.
I love Naked House.
Yeah, that's our people, you know.
And your house looks incredible. We need to do like an episode of Cribs sometime, like the Bunny version where I knock on your door and I'm like in laundry or something, and I knock on doors and I just go through people's houses because your place looks cool with James Bond in the background and everything.
It's a lot of fun. You know, my I don't know, my inner crew, my core, you know, it's kind of got it's tongue in cheek, call it Club D, because people can come here. I don't have any kids, and you know, unless something's crazy's going on, and I've been away for 3 or 4 days without any sleep, working. You know, they can come up here and get away from life for a while. Most of my friends, like probably your friends, it all seems fun and games, but there's a lot. To do the play hard thing, you got to do the work hard thing.
You do. You do. It's a real drag.
It is, but they can come to Club D and we can have a few elixirs and trade some stories and sit out on the balcony and watch life go by, you know?
I love that.
So,
I love it. Do you have many buddies that are like in the same industry as you, or do you try to kind of keep that area small?
That would be option B. I just, I try to keep away. Look, I'm proud to do what I do, but there's a lot of really strange people in my profession, and
sure,
just try to keep my distance. Now, I will say that the ones that I'm close to have really got my back, and they don't tend to be the flamboyant types that are braggarts and loudmouths, which is probably makes up, unfortunately, a lot of them. The really quiet ones I've found are like the really solid people. There's actually one in Texas I've been friends with for a long time, just low key, quiet, but like, man, I mean, that dude, I mean, he knows his stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm the guys that I know and respect in my profession are usually like really low key, you know, they're not braggarts. And unfortunately, in this business, like a lot of businesses, but particularly this one, because it is unique in a lot of respects, it becomes a person's persona 100% of the time.
Oh, I could totally see that.
Yeah, and I'm not like that. That's I wouldn't be like that with any job. I'm really good at what I do. I enjoy it. I found my niche. I got lucky. You know, the good Lord blessed me in that way. But that's my business life, you know, and I rarely will bring up my professional life, you know, when it comes to my personal life. And I get asked a lot of questions, as you can imagine.
Oh, I bet.
And I, you know, I'll share stories with people that I'm really close to, or if I'm in a really great mood one night and I've got something that I can throw in an easy segue.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I don't talk about it much certainly with strangers, because I mean, they'll corner you at a cocktail party for an hour and 15 minutes. And,
I'm
you know,
sure.
I told a banker one time, I said, let me ask you something. Do you go home and look at spreadsheets? And he said, no. And I said, then no, I don't watch Criminal ID Channel all night, and I'm not really sure about this whole Murtaugh thing. You know, there's always this de jour thing on Netflix or whatever. A few years ago, it was the guy in Wisconsin who got convicted wrongfully. I mean, I do this for a living. I've had those kind of cases.
Yeah.
And they're draining emotionally, sometimes to a degree that people really don't understand. And some of them are truly fascinating. And I do, you know, I try not to forget that I've had a really unique life, and I'm just really blessed and to get paid sometimes a lot of money to do these, you know, these cases that I don't tell anybody. I would have done a lot of them for free, you know. But when that's over, that's over. I want to be a normal person and go have a drink with my buddies and talk about sports and women and just all the crazy douchebag stuff that guys talk about that's meaningless in the long run. You know, I just want to do that, you know.
Well, and that's what I so appreciate, not only about you, but about you coming on this program in particular, because I don't like to paint women in a negative way. I just like to expose, and you know this, we talk about this. I like to kind of be the interpreter so that men can better understand what they're getting into with them, so they can be prepared. So if you wouldn't mind, I would really love to hear, and I know, you know, you have to have your work hat on right now. Sometimes when we're talking, we don't. But
no, this is different. You know, I mean, obviously I'm here under the, you know, the fun part where I get to talk about work, and it's fun, you know, with you, but also to enlighten people, like you said.
And it's important because I think that a lot of men maybe are on their way to being set up to being cheated on, or just having a marriage dissolve that maybe doesn't need to. And I always say that sex saves marriages. It's a big deal. You and I talk about it a lot off camera. Like that remaining strong in that sexual connection is just such a huge factor. But I know along those lines, you see a lot of stuff where the woman kind of starts indicating a wandering eye or a wandering attitude, even, you know, maybe she's not actively cheating or even thinking about it, but she's bored. So do you mind kind of enlightening I mean, it's been over 25 years of just being in this industry specifically, you've seen it all. You know, what do you see are the most often like the tells or the things that people do and don't necessarily consider when thinking they maybe have a wife that's on the way out the door?
Yeah. So, you know, the conventional stuff that people have probably heard before that we'll quickly touch on, which is true. And then I'll give it a little nuance of things that I've seen that have never appeared on these lists. Give it a little bit different twist. So the traditional things, more focus on appearance, hiring a personal trainer, as you know, in your industry, that doesn't always mean that somebody's, out to go, lose 50 pounds and sex it up and, open up a whole demographic for themselves that wasn't there before. But oftentimes that's what happens. Sometimes it's by accident, and sometimes they specifically say, I'm going to hire a personal trainer. I'm going to get in better shape. I can do better than this. Okay. So if you've got a partner who, particularly a female who goes to, to find a personal trainer, and they just happen to end up with a good looking buff guy like Fort Worth Playboy. And then
thankfully I'm always right there like hanging on him. So it's
exactly. And then they come home and tell you, I hired a personal trainer. Well, what's her name? Well, it's a guy. Okay. And next thing you know, but he's happy. He loves, he's got this partner that's about, I didn't ask you all that.
Yeah.
I mean, when they start, they basically sort of hang themselves. We'll get into that in a little bit. In a minute, but
go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you.
TMI with stuff like that. You should just put that on the hard drive. Okay. But new clothes, particularly new lingerie. Those are all things that you see. And like, if you were to Google things, you might look forward to a spouse is cheating, particularly if it's a female cheating on a man. New perfume, less available physically and mentally. All of a sudden they're working more. They don't seem to be listening as intently to you about anything really. But particularly things that you think are important. Maybe you're thinking about applying for that job with the promotion, and she just seems distant. Okay.
Well, and a lot of times with that kind of thing, I also see women almost being like, where she would have been your number one cheerleader 5 years prior. Now she's kind of like,
Yeah, exactly. And then, the super obvious changes in sex life. I think women have a far more difficult time, as a general rule. There's exceptions, sleeping with more than one man. We always go back to the dichotomy. I don't care what people don't want to get off on this track, 26 genders and all this bullshit. Studies have borne out for years that women are more emotional, men are more logical. That's just the way it is. It's always going to be that way.
Sure.
And so I think women have a far more difficult time. And once they make the leap of sleeping with somebody besides their spouse, that's when shit starts to really get real. Okay.
Agreed. It really starts messing with them mentally.
Right. And so the most, and this is a shout out to Jonathan Lusk, my opinion, one of the best divorce lawyers I've ever dealt with. He brought up to me, and I had heard in passing, but he keeps up with a lot of this stuff like I do. And he was talking about the Four Horsemen of broken relationships. Have you ever heard this?
No, please.
So by John Gottman, who's pretty well renowned in his field for couples therapy. He noticed the same things over and over. And so the Four Horsemen are essentially, let's see if I can find these on here. So criticism, number one, far more criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling.
Yeah.
And here's the big one, and this is one, and I see this, and I experience this personally, and that is contempt. When you are, and in particular, and this is the death knell for a relationship that studies bear this out, when you start criticizing your partner in front of other people, then the Grim Reaper he's packing up and heading to your house.
Agreed.
I think it's just, we've all seen that awkward moment at parties where somebody's done that and then they do the eye roll or whatever. I mean, once you get there, it's almost impossible to put that back together. And so the thing is to try to avoid all that. But when you get to that contempt stage where they won't even look you in the eye when you're trying to talk to them, in particular when they eye roll in front of your friends and things like that, ooh, man, that's pretty much the death knell. So those are like the typical things, and then the things that I would add that I've sort of seen over the years, and one very recent thing because of technology. But I would add, we always laugh about it, Dave, and you talk about the 1,000 cock stare.
Oh yeah.
For hoes, that there's just a certain look that, because I mean, there's just nothing left. They've lost their ability to pair bond because they've slept with so many dudes. Well, there's the 1,000-mile stare when you are talking to someone that you've lost. And this is particular, I think, with when a man has lost a woman.
I agree.
Like, even if she's trying, she is a million miles away. So it's the 1,000-mile stare. Like, even when she looks at you, she's looking right through you. And that goes along with that contempt stage of the Four Horsemen of the broken relationship. I think he technically calls it the four apocalypsemen of divorce. But you could apply that
right there. That's accurate.
Yeah. So I personally call this the beginning of the demonization process. So for me, I've seen it over and over and I hear this from guys all the time. And when I tell them this, I mean, the lights go, like if I haven't heard from them, the lights go on. And I'm like, everything you do is going to be criticized. I don't care. Like, this is at the point where they know they're in trouble. Okay.
Yeah.
So they either, they know the relationship's in trouble, or they've actually had a woman just flat out say, I'm going to divorce you. And then they do the dishes, they're taking out the trash, they're doing everything they can.
Yeah.
And then the girl says, well, you missed a spot on that dish. I mean, if you can't do it, well, don't do it at all.
You can't do anything right. Men in this stage cannot do anything. Yeah.
Once the demonization process starts, I'm not a psychologist. Maybe I'm real, just like you, we're real world psychologists. So I don't really know the whole process, but I think a lot of it is the demonization process takes place after a woman has already checked out mentally and almost certainly physically. She's probably sleeping with another dude at that point. And so she's got to find a way in her mind to justify bad behavior. But also, I think deep down subconsciously, it's kind of Freudian. She's wondering, am I making a mistake?
Agreed.
Am I going to, like, I don't even know all these guys, but we haven't paid bills together. We haven't gone through, the guy she's having an affair with. There's just fun and games,
Yeah.
So in the back of her mind, she's wondering, is he a loser? Am I fucking up? By leaving this marriage, oftentimes with a good guy, good husband and father. But once the demonization process takes place, I tell these guys, man, no, because what they want to do is they want to send flowers, they want to let's
get chores. Yeah.
Or God forbid, the dreaded rose petals to the hot steam bath when they get home. Dude, that's when times are good.
Yeah.
So society and, oftentimes well-meaning friends and relatives give you horrible advice.
Horrible.
This is my opinion. Once a woman has sort of made that leap, particularly if she's already sleeping with another man, you're digging a deeper hole. You're showing weakness. And I try not to veer off into like ultra macho territory because that doesn't help anybody either. I just try to give people the truth. And reality is when men get into the all too familiars, and I obviously can't mention any names. We've got multiple cases right now, but I had a couple of guys, and some of these guys. I mean, because I've referred them to you, where they're in that begging stage and they're in denial. They're in denial a lot of times because we've got circumstantial evidence that they're committing adultery. We don't quite have enough yet to be slam dunk, and they'll do their best to talk themselves out of the fact that that's even circumstantial. Oh, well, she must have been doing this, and they met in that parking lot of that hotel. Because and you're like, are you kidding me? I mean, dude, she's banging another dude.
Yeah.
And my first few years in business, I would try to, because you feel sorry for people going through a situation like that. I try to sugarcoat it.
It's hard to watch. It's hard to kind of be on the team in even a peripheral way.
It is. I just finally just started being brutally honest because I figured this is not doing either one of us any good, sugarcoating this, and I lay it out now. I mean,
Right.
I try to be a a steel fist in a velvet glove, but still, you got to tell them the truth.
Yeah.
And they're not always going to get it immediately, but I think it helps them to see things faster and get on the road to closure faster.
Yeah.
But so another thing, I was asking a guy the other day, a client, I said, when was the first time that you realized that things were going astray? And he said, she started acting strange about her phone. I mean, these things we're talking on right now, because I'm using my phone. There's no point in using a laptop for something like this. I mean, these have the power of a 360 Watson computer in the 80s,
Exactly.
I mean, these are stunning devices that we have. People's lives now, we're in a different era. They revolve around the phone, or as Fort Worth Playboy calls the box of dicks for women.
The box of dicks.
I guess the opposite would be a box of cooters for men.
But, yours is a box of pussies.
A box of pussies, whatever, box of cooch. But I'm telling you, when they start acting strange about that phone and hiding the phone and dropping the phone when you come into the room, but the ultimate litmus test, and I feel bad about this because one of the best therapists that I know in Birmingham, he's like, people do have a right to their privacy on a phone to a large degree. But here's the thing. Like, if you could just ideally lay it out, and because if clients are on the fence, I'll say, go home tonight and just immediately ambush them when you get a chance and say, hey, let me see your phone a second. My phone's not working. My battery's dead. Watch how they act. Okay. Yeah. And if they start to get really defensive, say, hey, what's the problem? Why can't I see your phone? How about this? Let's make a compromise. I don't really give a shit if you're texting your friends and y'all are, maybe you've said some things where we got into an argument and you're saying derogatory things about me. I want to know who you're talking to.
Right.
I want to see in your text messages who you're talking to. Can we just live with that? And I'm telling you, it's 100%. And people will freak out. Even people who are really sharp on their toes. You catch them flat-footed like that.
Yeah.
I mean, something's going on. If they refuse, and if they give it to you immediately, like, you're sure. I mean, you're golden.
Yeah. And there's like a TikTok trend that I've kind of keeps coming through my purview of essentially this, where it's either a guy who's like, hey, let me use your phone, just like exactly what you're saying, but he's actually filming, and she's doing dishes or whatever, and she's like, okay, it's over there, and he's like, you don't have a problem with me using your phone or looking through your phone or whatever, and she's like, why would I have a problem with you looking at my phone? I'm your wife, you're my husband, everything I have is yours, And then there are the videos that really circulate through Twitter, the ones where a couple is stopped on the street. Do you trust each other? Yeah. Oh, I trust each other. I trust him with everything. I love him, blah, blah, blah. We've been married for 5 years. Oh, okay. We'll trade phones. Oh. And she's literally.
I'm telling you, even really street smart people, you will watch them like panic, sheer panic.
Hard to watch. Yeah. Hard to watch.
And basically, you've been told something there. The question is, what do you do with it? Men just tend to be a lot more naive about it than women. And we talked about how women, having affairs and all that. There's so many similarities, but boy, there's some differences. The way they get into them, the way they handle them, the way they, once they've been found out, is like the chasm of the Grand Canyon.
Ooh,
And
I
mean, yeah.
The horns come out when women get caught.
They get caught.
Come out.
And again, since we're talking among friends who are realistic, and we're not, people are going to follow the whole PC woke sort of, agenda that people follow these days. We're just being plain talking real people. So here's what I see. Women tend to take almost no responsibility when caught. Men tend to take almost too much responsibility, and then they go into begging, pathetic mode. Women are like, I wouldn't have even done this if you hadn't done this and that, and oftentimes it's just ridiculous things. She just oftentimes, particularly in this Western life that we all live. We're all so busy, and this isn't 50 years ago where women had almost no access to anybody except the milkman, which became like a joke, oh, your kid looks like the milkman. I mean, men are in every facet of a woman's life now. And so there's so many opportunities, and women I see will just not take any responsibility. It's just like, no, it's all your fault. The demonization process has probably already kicked in big time by then. Guys, if they get caught, it's strange. They kind of do the opposite. Like, oh, baby, this is, I'll never do it again. It's all my fault. It's not because you've gained 80 pounds and you've got like, I can't stand doing doggy style with you because it looks like a cottage cheese festival. Or
what a visual.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's real though. But that's real,
and that's real talk right there.
Yeah, like he stayed. I have clients right now, like fit, not reasonably fit, like super fit guys in their 50s, early 60s, 40s that are good looking guys.
Yeah.
And there were these women, and a couple of them have been your clients, that highly educated. They have their shit together across the board. But
and they're married to women who look like potatoes.
Yes. And these women have gaslighted them into thinking they're all the problem,
Yeah.
And I hate now because so it used to be that when a woman was left by a guy 20 years ago, there was a trend started, well, oh, he must be gay. Yeah. And now it's turned into, oh, well, he's a narcissist, and he's gaslighting
that's a popular one.
He's gaslighting me. Not everybody can be a narcissist and not and a sociopath.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Do you agree with that though? There's this bizarre extreme dichotomy.
Absolutely. Well, men are, I think that males and females both are getting further and further away from kind of the standard of excellence that we were raised with, but certainly our parents and our grandparents were raised with. Mm-hmm. It just kind of is deadening. Like the corners are being worn off.
Yeah.
But this is one area where I think that men are actually still almost hyper masculine in there taking responsibility for things like that. Exactly what you're talking about, to such an extreme level, instead of holding her accountable for her part in any of this.
Right. And of course, by the time they get to me and you, women generally have been thinking about this stuff for easily months, but sometimes years.
At least.
Guys always get blindsided. Not always, but I would say 90% of the time. Not just blindsided, but blindsided to a degree that's shocking. Yeah. And I use the rule of three a lot of times. It's not dead on, but I'll say, well, this is after we've confirmed there's an affair. So how long do you think the affair has been going on? Oh, I don't know, like 6 months. Well, multiply that times 3, and you're probably getting close to the ballpark.
That's probably fair. That's probably fair, unfortunately. Yeah. And I know women who, I'm thinking of one woman in particular who, she didn't cheat, but she did know that this marriage and the father of her children wasn't going to go anywhere, that she wasn't going to end up staying with him. And so she had time to get an entire graduate degree. So roughly another, say, 2.5 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Women aren't good at playing the long game in any area except for planning to exit a marriage. And then they're magical at playing a long game. I don't understand why they can't use it in any other area of their lives.
I'll kid you not, Bunny. This is a legal pad I was using. I don't care if somebody blows it up. That was just my notes about what we're talking about, was like traditional signs of cheating and some things we found, or our clients have found, like legal pads hidden that go back 4 or 5 years, where it's literally a checklist. Wow. And my clients have no clue. And once they get through lining and checking through the whole thing, it's time to get. And by then they've already interviewed their divorce lawyers. Yeah. They know who they're going to get. And guys are completely oblivious. Roughly 80% of divorces in this country are filed by women. I don't know all the reasons for that, but I would say, out of that 80% of the time guy gets served with divorce papers, 70% of them never saw it coming, even though they should have. The writing has been on the wall for quite some time.
Yeah.
I'm batting 1,000. I'm 2-0. So I filed for divorce in both cases, but I had an advantage just to, being in this profession and seeing a lot of the signs.
Sure. If you want to have an advantage, at least this is a good area to have one in.
Yeah, to a large degree. But I'm
Well,
I'm still human. I got rickrolled just like every other guy in some ways. It's human.
I have a friend who actually he answered the door to the divorce papers being served. He was at home. All the family was there. Nothing out of the ordinary. A normal Sunday morning or whatever. All 4 or 5 kids were home. The wife was home. Oh, will you get the door? He answers the door, and he turned around, and she's behind him, and that's how he found out he was getting a divorce.
Happens all the time.
What the actual fuck?
Well, I'll tell you, a lot of, depending on how vicious they are, some of them specifically request the maximum embarrassment, which oftentimes is at work.
Yeah.
They want them to get embarrassed at work. So they'll specifically ask that they be served at work. People drive they twist the knife, I mean,
people get ruthless. I'm sure.
Yeah.
That's the unfortunate thing. I'm sure it is difficult in your profession, both as a federal law enforcement officer and in private investigations, to see any good in humanity at all anymore. I mean, sometimes it's just hard because you're seeing people at their worst and at their weakest.
Yeah, I think I was in denial the first few years about that because I got asked that a lot.
Yeah.
But then I started thinking about it, and I had to be honest with myself, and so I started really making an honest effort to compartmentalize, and because I figured if I don't, it's really, I think it's mentally damaging. It can cause a lot of problems in your personal life, social life. I mean, family life, just everything.
Absolutely.
And so I just kind of adopted a sense of humor about a lot of it. I mean, almost like a gallows humor. And if you look at a lot of the top domestic lawyers, a lot of them have that because you have to survive. You hear the same things about ER doctors,
Yeah.
I mean, if you've heard some of if you know an ER nurse or doctor and you hear, or you have a happy hour with them after they've gotten off, and you hear some of the things, the way they talk about it, it sounds cold, like, hey, how many did you saw off tonight? Talking about a limb or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I got three arms and 2 legs. But really, it's just, you have to function like that to be able to function at the highest degree of your professional level, but also to function as a normal person and realize that this is not normal for everyday life.
Right.
There's a lot of good people out there. We're all fallible, but I'm catching people. And of course, when I was a federal law enforcement officer, I mean, I caught like really, obviously some of the worst criminals around, but I'm dealing now. Of course, we still do a lot. I do criminal defense work, but not as much because to me, that's truly depressing. But the domestic stuff, and like corporate cases, you're just like 2 business partners that are at each other's throats. And those are like divorces. Those can get really nasty, but a lot of times you're dealing with like normal, decent people who are just going through a bad time in life.
Right.
And a nasty divorce
is
right up there with death and, medical problems. I mean, it's awful to go through. And anybody who's never gone through that, it's difficult to explain. I was trying to explain to a girl not too long ago who broke up with her boyfriend of how many years, and was talking about how difficult it was. And I'm sure it's no different than going through a divorce. There is a difference because you didn't have lawyers involved. You didn't have a court system involved.
Right.
And I hate to say this, but the system, I don't think it's by design, but it ends up de facto designed to make you hate your partner as much as possible.
Yeah.
It's really difficult for a lot of these people that say they walked away amicably. I'm pretty dubious about that a lot of times. And if it was really amicable, did you really give a shit about each other to begin with?
Right. Well, that's a good point. That's a good point. And I think that a lot has to do with also just your personal elasticity. I mean, it could be kind of ugly, but I think a lot of people, and it sounds like I know that you're among these, where you kind of go, I cannot allow a bad situation or a bad phase of my life to ruin, first of all, what we had when things were good, and second, to ruin the future that has nothing to do with with this past person. You know, any kind of future that I might build with one or multiple girls, but you know, with the future that's ahead.
Yeah, I think the healthy approach is to try to
for men to do.
Yeah, and you see it all the time. You know, guys are bent on revenge and all that, and they have all these fantasies.
Lots of revenge fantasies out there.
Revenge fantasies and all, but really the best revenge is just going out and living a good life, man, and just being indifferent. You know, somebody asked me, you know, recently about, you know, I've got 2 ex-wives, and asked me about look, I don't care if she's won the lottery, if she's on food stamps or something in between. I just don't give a shit. And that's where you need to be. You just need to think about your life and having fun and doing your thing and working hard and trying to accomplish things, being around good people, surrounding yourself around good people. And that's what you need to focus on. You don't need to be focusing on what she or he's doing, you know, and, you know, let the chips fall where they may. Generally, those people cast their lot and let them live with it, and you just move on. And I've, you know, been in this business long enough. I'm getting 2nd generation, probably going to get like 3rd generation referrals. You know, I stay in long enough, I'm getting like grandbabiys from, you know, that were 2 years old in 1998 that, you know, they're going through a divorce. But yeah, I mean, I've watched this go down so much that I've seen a lot of people that, you know, clients of ours that were really treated horribly, and you've got some right now. You know, you're dealing with them, and I think I just another referral or 2 where that's going on. But it doesn't happen overnight. But if you give it enough time, karma's real. You know, I mean, you call it what you want. Every cultures have different names for it. But my clients, you look 4 or 5 years down the road, as sad as they were and broken when I had them, I mean, they've got these amazing lives a lot of times now. And then the other side, you hear things aren't going so well. They're not quite what they thought they were going to be. You know,
the grass is not always greener. In fact, it often is not greener.
Now, I think people get bored. I think particularly in this society, Western women get really bored at some point. And I think it's really difficult for a guy to bust his ass and put a roof on the head, and he can't just come home and put on a jester suit and entertain you. And at some point, I think women that really understand, like, hey, like what you've got with Playboy, you'd been through enough thorns that you're like, hey, I got a rose here. You know, he's a crazy rose, you know.
But he's my crazy rose.
Yeah, he's your crazy rose. And you're not, you know, you're not stupid enough to just get bored at some point and go, well, there's a better rose out there. You know, you've seen enough thorns, you know. But most women, or a lot of women that I see, they get bored and they think there's a more beautiful rose. And then oftentimes they realize that it's fool's gold, you know.
And they often think that they are also far better than they are.
Do not get me started, because I'm out in that world now. You know, I'm single, and I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean,
you're seeing the whole gamut. Okay, so based on that, just to segue, because I want to have a little bit of fun with you also, because at the end of the day, you and I are always friends. So I know that you don't really have a type. You're attracted to like all kinds of girls.
Yeah.
So I want to know if you can pinpoint it from any generation, who your ultimate celebrity crush is.
Oh man. You know, I have this weird thing that I will say this. There was something about that era before the 60s. It's counterculture just basically started this whole this is my opinion, downtrend, and fucked up our society. And you've posted some pictures from that era, and I was a child, so I wasn't really sexually, you know, fully formed at all. But there's something about that late 60s, and I would say up until about early 80s, but certainly that whole 79 wheelhouse where the women were thin, they had this beautiful long hair. There was a sense of innocence about them, but they were still sexy as hell. You know, they
like
weren't
a Jane Seymour kind of girl.
Oh yeah. I mean, Jane Seymour. I mean, God, what's her name? The most beautiful one from Charlie's Angels, who's like like literally looked so cartoonish. She was beautiful. Not Farrah Fawcett, but the brunette, Kate. What was her name? Not Kate Smith. It was you know the one I'm talking. Jacqueline Smith.
Yes. Yes.
I mean,
and
yeah.
she aged well too. She probably aged better than Farrah Fawcett, actually.
So when I think about celebrity crushes, I kind of go back to that era, even though I was a child. But they to me, it was just the last time that women. It was before the. There's a lot of good things about feminism, but I think the radical feminists that, to truth be told, are jealous, of pretty women, and it was kind of their mission to it was payback, to turn a generation of, I haven't seen them. I think the author that wrote Sex and the City is fairly attractive, but like if you've ever seen the staff of writers from that era, they're like, I'm like, whoa, man. I mean, I'm going to go to therapy myself to keep, but they were like obese, grotesque. It was like like, hey, let's turn an entire generation of women into sluts and make it cool,
Sure,
and go to your jobby job, and get into debt and buy that Gucci purse and hey, no guy's gonna mind that you slept with 100 dudes. Well, that's just not the reality, And so I go back to before all that. Those pictures you've posted of girls in a high school parking lot, with their bell-bottom pants, and so I don't. But women just were, and they didn't wear a lot of makeup. They didn't have these crazy hairdos, but that was it. That was, to me, that was the last vestige of the right. They weren't wearing Victorian clothes and on the fainting couch or anything. It was just that perfect mix. That's probably way more of an answer than you were looking for.
I like
guess,
that answer. That's pretty good. But that is funny because I mean, even your wives have been not similar at all.
No, completely.
You know what I mean? So it's not even just the girls you date or are interested in or talking to. It's the full meal deal. So it always fascinates me, especially with men of mystery like yourself. What's your celebrity kind of?
Well, a lot of guys have types, and a lot of women have types. I just don't, and the way I look at that just increases my demographic exponentially.
That's true. It's a win-win.
I mean, I don't care it'd be nice if we were the same religion. I don't care about that now. If they're like a really good person and they're fun and they're kind and, they're not self-absorbed and, they think that I'm going to be impressed by their diplomas and all. Guys don't really give a shit about stuff like that, I mean, guys just want like a really fun, decent woman who's ride or die, and there ain't many ride or die left,
Exactly.
Like you're one of the last, you're one of the last.
I'm trying to make more. I'm trying.
Are you? Yeah. I admire your mission. I mean, could you? Yeah, I mean, start branches. My Playboys Bunny ranch. Start out like a whole. You need acolytes across the nation.
Bunny ranch. I need a bunny ranch.
Right.
You need
a bunny basic training.
I do need that. I'm actually working on something along those lines.
Yeah.
But here's what's funny. I mean, even 5 or 6 years ago, men were reaching out to me often and saying, "You need to write for women. I would buy this for my daughter. I would buy this for my wife." All this stuff. The problem is those women don't want to read it.
I know.
Because they're so jaded. It really takes kind of a generational understanding and respect for that kind of feminine behavior, and for lack of a better way to put it, but truly feminine behavior who embraces a femininity and strength.
You make up a good point, though, that right quick, a phenomena that I see now that I'm out in the dating world, which first was depressing and terrifying at the same time.
Yeah.
But I've been like the lab rat for my Playboys Bunny and y'all know all my stories.
We have a lot of fun.
I mean, even we can't talk about some of these stories, on to the world. But let me just say, I've made the transition well. I think you would agree with that. So, but one thing I've been shocked at is, and I pointed it out, and I don't know if he already knew it before. With Playboy talked about this bizarre inverse relationship you see so much with modern women now. The older they get, the higher their standards get, and the more unrealistic and out of touch they are with the reality of those standards. Why would I want to go out with a woman in her 40s or 50s who has this outrageous list of things, whether I can, conform to that or not. But asking things like, well, do they have valet parking or whatever? Bitch, I'm paying for all this. What do you care?
Right. Don't you worry about it. It
I
is
started reluctantly going younger, and it was almost by mistake because a few buddies of mine that were single and been out there in the single scene for a while, done well, bachelors, living the bachelor life and doing it right. Like, you got to go younger. And I was like, what are we going to have in common? Well,
we both like to fuck.
We like to fuck. They like to, yes, they enjoy the physical side of things, but they're appreciative. I mean, they appreciate me a lot more, and they don't. I swear to God, it's crazy. Some of them don't care if we go to. Not that I would do this, but if I was like, hey, why don't we do that new Sonic banana Snickers milkshake tonight? Could you imagine doing that with some?
And she thinks it's the greatest idea on the planet. She's
like, yeah, let's try that. Whereas, I got, my typical, 48-year-old, 52-year-old, corporate cubicle, with her jobby job that she thinks is so important.
Yeah.
And she would be insulted. I tell you, insulted if I brought something like that up. Like, yeah. So it's just that they have this bizarre, concept. And, I just don't think nobody's being honest with them. Guys aren't interested in, all of your high demands, and, and your looks are getting worse every year. And it's just biology, it's just biology. And so I've definitely tended to go younger recently. And I was, a little dubious of it initially, but hey,
it's
so far so good. So far so good. Yeah. No complaints.
Pictures of them, and they're cute.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, thanks. I know you'd be honest with me, but nah, not that one. Yeah.
So with that in mind, and with your profession and everything that you've taught us and talked about today, what one piece of relationship advice do you find, whether it's true, you found it true in your work, you found it true in your personal life, what is the best piece of relationship advice that you can offer those watching?
For women or men, or everybody?
I would say in general, but more specifically, if it needs to be gender specific, I would say men.
What could I give them advice? God, be careful, man. I mean, the single most important decision if I had a daughter would be to tell her, you've got to be sure with your mate. But I would tell my son, maybe is more emphatically, because it's just so true. I mean, you choose the partner you choose is going to have it might be the most important decision you make in your life.
Yeah.
And you want to get that right. And if you don't, hopefully you learn a lot of lessons. But you've got to find somebody who's a decent person. I mean, you have to, and you got to enjoy being around each other. Obviously, there's got to be a physical attraction. You talk about that all the time. I mean, that's got to be there.
Right.
But you have to like each other too. You have to respect each other, and once that starts going away, the physical starts going away. I can't get into too much detail, but like my first, well, both my wives were pretty, but my first wife was really, really drop dead gorgeous. But it just got to the point where, the Bible talks about the tongue is the most powerful weapon. And she said such nasty things on a regular basis, and wake up the next day like, oh, you're still mad about that? Yeah, I am,
Yeah.
And the inability to not give an honest apology is extremely damaging in a relationship. And I think a lot of people have, for whatever reason, way more than I would have thought when I was younger. A lot of people just can't even apologize, and when they do, it's like phony. But I've got my faults, but I will apologize, for things that I think, like, I've reflected on it, and I want to give an honest apology. And I think that goes way longer than people think.
I agree.
And so people that can apologize to each other, that's a big deal in a relationship. But if you get one partner who either is incapable of apologizing, or basically the same thing, like they'll get to the point they're exasperated. Okay, I'm sorry, that kind of thing, or a crocodile tear apology. But the people that apologize genuinely and it comes from the heart, you got a chance. So choosing partners is key. But I think you've made a point that you've never expounded on since I've seen that, where you said, I think a person can only take going through like, so many brutal breakups. At some point, there's no gas left in the tank, and you just become so jaded that, and I've met some of these women recently.
A lot. Yeah,
and
we see
and
it a lot.
yeah, and there's just nothing there.
More and more as we age, and therefore our social circle is aging.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see it so much when you're in your 20s, but when you're in your 40s and your 50s and moving on, you certainly are more surrounded by people who just kind of have gone a little bit dead inside.
Right.
And it's very hard to see, but you think through their life, or you learn more about their life if they're relatively new to yours, and you realize they've had a lot of hardship, whether it's all relationship, like love relationships, whether it's a child passing, all kinds of struggles that can just literally just eat you up inside. There's only so much you can heal from.
Yeah. Another thing I like about like you and Fort Worth Playboy, because it certainly fits with me, and unfortunately, in like my really serious relationships, I don't think I had a partner that appreciated this. I've got a really serious side, I have to, but then I've got like my goofy ass Dumb and Dumber Jim Carrey side that, I'll walk around, with my cock tape behind my balls, and just bounce in on a chick, like, hey, what do you think? I decided to go. I'm I didn't like being a man anymore, and I've had girls, that's ridiculous. That's just so stupid. But I want the girl who thinks that's funny. My sophomoric humor, it's goofy and it's not stupid. And when a girl makes you feel like, oh, you're just retarded. I think a lot of women need to rethink that. You need the guy that's still got that high school.
It's true. I always tell guys to go back to what they thought was funny at 15,
Exactly. And and after my second divorce, I said, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to be fine. And if they don't like it, fuck them too. Okay.
And you're having a wonderful time.
And I'm having a great time.
You were actually married when we met you. You're having a lot better time now.
And I thought I was having fun then. I just didn't realize I wasn't being appreciated. That'd be another thing. Find somebody to appreciate you.
Yeah.
Find somebody that really appreciates you. Find somebody that prioritizes you like you prioritize them. And if you feel like you're getting, like they're number one or number two on your priority list, but you're 4 or 5 on theirs, I don't think that's going to change. And you might need to make some hard decisions.
True. It's true. You can't love someone into wanting you back.
You can't. You think they're going to have an epiphany. That was kind of the thing for me, like in my second marriage, is I kept thinking, well, she's going to have an epiphany. She's going to lose this great guy. It'll be hard to replace me and all that. Nah. Now, the only epiphany came from me when I realized this is what a lot of people do in a marriage or a serious relationship, but certainly a marriage, you could probably identify with this. Unless it's like really egregious behavior, like somebody's beating the shit out of you or your kids or something, you come to a fork in the road. Mm-hmm. I can either live a pretty good life. I don't have a terrible marriage. I'm with a decent person, and I can carve out my own life within that, which I did by playing golf and things like that.
Right.
Or I can say, you know what? I deserve better. And even if I got to be alone, I'm not going down that road. And if I happen to, to choose option A and leave, then maybe I will find somebody. But if I don't, I'd rather just be myself, have my own crew of people that's got my back. And that's what I chose. And I think that's a hard thing to do, because one of the things I've noticed in my business, people fear the unknown more than anything. You can get used to a really crummy marriage. A quick story. Do you know, and I don't know that some of our listeners might, but when Eisenhower's troops rescued some of the people from the Holocaust camps, they all knew they were going to die. But something like 1 in 25 didn't want to leave, because maybe they had a good deal and got an extra loaf of bread from the guard they became friends with. And they had a routine. And who are these people that say they're rescuing me? How do I know? So if you can get so used to a death camp, how many people do you know that are used to a dead marriage, and they've just sort of figured, that's the way it is, and
it's part of it.
But the fear of unknown terrifies them, even though it might have a great ending. They don't know. People like certainty, and they are terrified of the unknown. See it all the time, So you got to have the guts.
Bringing the wisdom today, Dan. I love it.
You got to sack it up, and you got to take option A and say, you know what? I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And it's going to be, there's going to be some ups, but there's going to be a lot of downs in the process. But you get through those valleys and you get, you get through them, and you just go out and try to have fun and surround yourself with good people, and you're going to have a great time.
Yeah.
You're going to be
You're a
like
great
me.
example of that too.
I am. I'm having fun. I'm going hopefully to Portugal next month, Mexico the next month. I refuse to take the vax. So my travels have been on hold. But I'm a pure blood now. I'm hoping in 5 years women are going to be chasing me down the street for my sperm.
There you go. That's a good problem to have.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, the more that comes out about all this vax stuff, that might be the case. But
there you go.
Worse problems to have, right?
I love it. Well, with that.
Uh-oh. You checking me out?
I'm imitating you. I'm looking for all the hoes out there.
Hold on. I compact, my lady.
There you go.
Yeah. That's actually my day-to-day gun.
Travel.
Yeah.
And we each have our drinks. So
that's right. Yeah. Here's my Milo's. You need to sponsor me. This is Milo's Splenda tea.
There you go.
I was going to do my best Dean Martin imitation, but there's no alcohol in it.
It looks more like bourbon, so we'll go with that.
Later tonight. And anybody that knows me knows I'm a vodka and tequila guy. So this is Splenda. Milo's Splenda. Big fan.
Dan, thank you so much for being on the
Love
Bunny
you.
interviews. You are a gentleman and a scholar and a dear friend, and Fort Worth and I appreciate you so much.
You guys. Love you guys. Yeah. Love you guys.
Thank you for rolling with me today. This has been a fun adventure.
No, thanks for having me. Let's do it again. Maybe one of these days I'll get my show going again. And unfortunately, I was
awesome.
I was confined to politics back then.
Episodes of your show still available to
Well, I was with another company, I basically had to sign a contract, and that was all about politics, because I do have a geopolitical background and all that stuff, but I don't want to do that anymore. If I ever do a podcast again, it's going to be my show, and it'll be something like, I don't know, Dano's World, kind of like Wayne's World.
And it'll be a roundtable discussion in your bachelor pad there.
Well, or some remote location in Lima, Peru, or wherever I'm traveling.
Yeah. I can't wait to be on that show.
Buenos Aires, whatever. Yeah.
So, that sounds awesome.
Yeah. Love you guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for all the wisdom you poured out. Thanks
for all y'all do. And thanks for all y'all do for my clients. And a quick plug for you guys. It started out on a lark. I was like, man, you need to talk to a woman, and I need somebody, I didn't know how it would work, but you are lights out with my male clients. You do a great job. I've got a lot of wisdom, but I don't have the female hindbrain.
Well, we make a good team.
We do.
Thank you so much.
Adios.
And thank you for those of you who have tuned in. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Now, you and I should still be good to